Welcome to Souhan Unfiltered at the website SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. We are live on a Wednesday night at the Local, the Irish pub in downtown Minneapolis on Nicollet, becoming one of my favorite places. Man, they do business here. My guest tonight, Michael Russo, Star Tribune hockey writer and travel savant, coffee connoisseur, and someone who will never complain about anything that ever happens on the road. Someone who takes everything in stride.
Actually, it was funny. I was flying to Winnipeg yesterday, and I was whining on the Twitter, and then somebody that was on the plane started tweeting me that was on the plane, and that was just an absolute calamity.
Well, I always wonder, is it a good thing to meet the people who follow you on Twitter, or are they almost two different universes?
Well,
there's the Twitter universe and there's the real world.
Well, a guy yesterday was calling me a dumbass on Twitter, and he called me about 15 different things.
You mean
last night.
Other than me?
Yeah. So I tweeted him back and I said, you know, I so enjoyed you following me for all these years too, and then I blocked him, and then you know, all my my loyal Twitter followers went after him. I didn't even see it because I blocked him, but two, I'm working during the game, so I didn't see it, and everybody was just annihilating this guy. And then actually, as I'm leaving, I felt terrible, even though I did nothing. Like, he just came after me, called me a dumbass, all this stuff. And anyway, this morning I woke up and I had a long email from the guy with a sincere apology, and I unblocked him and all that stuff. But
you're like a gang leader.
But the reason why I brought that
we
up,
need a name for your gang, by the way.
Well, LaPanta calls me the Pied Piper.
That's not good enough. We got to have a name for your gang.
So,
like, you're the Sharks, you're the Jets, you're the Crips, you're the Bloods.
Yeah. But the reason why I brought this up is because he did say something on Twitter that people were construing that he was threatening me. That he, one day he hopes that he'll run into me. He'll enjoy that or something. And so everybody was, oh, man.
You're
I got to be
quite
nicer to people on Twitter, I guess. But, on this flight, well, it started off we got on late, and then all of a sudden the pilot comes on and goes, well, we got a little bit of a fiasco, which I don't think should be a word in a pilot's vocab.
I've never heard a pilot use the word fiasco.
No, he called it a fiasco. Basically, we were overweight in the back of the plane, underneath. So they had to bring 6 bags onto the plane. And so they just started streaming them throughout the cabin, but mostly what they did were they were putting them in the back of the plane on top of the cabin. And so I said to the flight attendant, I said, as I'm tweeting that this has just become a Mickey Mouse show, she's buckling up bags, like in empty seats and stuff.
I saw that picture on your timeline. I know.
And so I asked the woman, I said, hey, if it's overweight under the plane, in the back of the plane, isn't it going to be overweight on top of the plane, in back of the plane? Because all there is like, I'm no, engineer, but it's only like a thin layer of, flooring that separates the top of the plane from the bottom of the fuselage. And she goes to me, this is my second day on the job. And I'm just like, and honestly, so the person that was on the plane with me, who's in the media business, I was DMing with her the entire time that we were like, basically through this fiasco, and it was hilarious. She was very nervous.
Now, I would say that
both the flight attendant and the passenger.
What I've read about aeronautics is the balance is one of the big concerns. Not just the sheer weight, it's the balance.
Right.
So that might have been what they were trying to correct. Although
but
wouldn't have made
put
me
it
a lot
in the back
better.
of the plane.
They did?
Yeah.
But you made it. You survived. That's the moral of the story.
I was confident. Especially we were in de-icing for like 35 minutes. The whole morning stunk. I get to the airport. I decide to drive myself because it's a one-day trip. Normally I cab, and the parking is closed, so I got to go park at the Park and Fly. Well, they're full because the airport's thing, so I had to do like the uncovered valet. And so now I'm on the bus going to the airport, and I left myself like 40 minutes to spare for this flight, so I'm already a little tense. And all of a sudden we're like driving to the airport, and I hear the snow just pelting our like bus, and I look outside and it's basically hail. And I just parked in uncovered valet for a day. And I'm just like, this is great. I'm going to get back to my car. First call is going to have to be to Allstate because I got hail damage. And then I finally get through the airport. I get to the thing. We have this weight issue. And then we go out to de-ice, and we're there for like 35 minutes in de-ice. We landed, and all this time, like I'm just, I know that Zucker is going to have some major surgery going on. I'm just trying to figure out what's the thing. We're on a plane with no internet for the hour and a half flight, and I'm basically going to miss their team meeting and skate. So I'm already just absolutely tense because we're going to be an hour and a half late to Winnipeg. But luckily the team cooperated and didn't break the story while I was in the air.
This is why scouts and sports writers get along so well.
Yeah, because all we do is complain to each other.
Well, but also in both jobs, the hardest part is often just getting there. Once you get there, you just work. It's,
you're right.
You just do what you do. But getting there can be the greatest challenge.
But it's funny. Yesterday, for a little flight to Winnipeg, it was just such a long day. Then you get to the game, and immediately there's news. Like I got word going to the game that Zucker was going to be out for the season and surgery, and I just didn't know if it was shoulder or collarbone, so I was just kind of like running around the MTS Center after I got there. And then I got a call from USA Hockey asking me to moderate this thing tonight. So I'm like in a snowstorm on the phone with Dave Fisher. You know Dave Fisher from USA Hockey. And I'm talking to him about moderating this thing, and I'm running around trying to figure out what's going on with Zucker, who is a USA Hockey stud. And then and so now I finally get the news, write up the blog, file the story. It's 6:30. They're in warm-ups, and it's just like when like as a sports writer you have a routine. You get there 3 hours before a game or 2.5, and you have your eat at the same time. Dick around, that type of stuff. Schmooze with scouts. It was like all of a sudden, like, all right, I filed my notebook on Zucker and Carter, and now the game's starting, and it just kind of like, you never kind of unwound. So then one of my most loyal Twitter followers, who is the most negative human being in history, this guy, InfoSeeker or whatever, he just launches into these, like, straight negative tweets about Yo screwing Christian Folan when, like, if Yo put Folan in the lineup yesterday after a 6-game winning streak, this guy also would have trashed Yo for pulling out Dumba or something, Then he's like, when's Coyle gonna? The game hasn't even started yet. When's Coyle gonna fight somebody? He's such a he's blah, blah, blah. And finally I just light into him on Twitter. I'm like, I am not in the mood right now, man. I have just like absolutely been like through the most hectic travel day ever to get here. Just finished my story. Last thing I think I need to see is this. So then I felt terrible because he wrote me back that he had like this awful day and got bad news and blah, 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 blah.
You're rather moody.
I know. Well,
you're rather moody. Now, let's get to all the topical wild stuff here shortly. Yep. It's been a fascinating stretch for the team. But first I want to talk about the Red Army documentary that you're going to go see later tonight.
Yeah.
But first, there are going to be 2 Twitter aspects to this show. The first is, if you have any Twitter questions for Michael Russo, send them to me. Tweet them at me in the next half an hour or so, and we'll do 10, 15 minutes of Twitter questions. Second Twitter aspect of this show, if you find the tweet that I just sent out or the Alive and Social Network tweet and retweet those tweets about the show, you will become eligible to win a $25 gift card to the local. And where would you rather have a $25 gift card to? I don't know. I'm starting to worry about my liver. Yeah. I'm doing all these shows in Irish pubs, and they're my favorite Irish pubs, and they have my favorite beers. I might be soon with Irish beer the way you are with coffee.
I like Guinness is my thing, man.
I like Guinness. I love Guinness.
Yeah.
I like Smithwick's too, but it's hard to beat Guinness draft.
Yeah.
It really
I didn't even realize you're drinking.
And I'm
Guinness.
drinking one as we speak.
I would love one. If I would have one right now, if I was not going to this screening right after this.
And tell me about the screening.
Well, so Gabe Polsky, who played at Yale, he's actually born in Minnesota, grew up in Chicago, feature filmmaker, has made films. He's been nominated for Oscars, won an Emmy. He made this documentary that's basically like a feature film, and I'm going to screen it for the first time today, so I don't want to act like I've seen it, but It's called Red Army, and it's been absolutely just highly acclaimed. Went into the Cannes Film Festival, Moscow Film Festival, Toronto Film Festival, all over the world. So it's coming out. It actually was released, I think, a couple weeks ago, and it starts at the Lagoon Theater, I think, this week, and they're going to have a screening tonight at the Lagoon. And basically, it's through the eyes of Slava Fetisov, one of the most decorated hockey players in the history of the Soviet Union. Played there forever, was part of the most incredible 5-man unit in history that included Igor Larionov, who I covered in Florida, who hated every moment that he was in Florida, by the way. Makarov and those guys. And Fetisov eventually came to the NHL, won a couple cups in '97 and '98 with the Detroit Red Wings, and was an absolutely fascinating. He's now a politician. He was a fascinating person to cover. I mean, he was one of those people that I remember when you'd interview, you were intimidated because he was so smart and he was so moody, and it was interesting. And so what I believe this film is about is not just taking you through, obviously, this incredible Soviet product and the hockey team that went on and lost to the United States in the 1980 Olympics, but past there, through the Canada Cups, through Fetisov's life, through all the behind the scenes of not just that Soviet hockey team, but the Soviet Union in general. And there's apparently all these twists and turns in the movie. And so I'm really looking forward to, seeing the screening tonight. The reception's going on right now that I could not attend. But then after the reception, the USA Hockey asked if I wanted to moderate this Q&A discussion with all the people that have paid $150 to come see this screening tonight.
Wow.
And it's going to be with Gabe Polsky, the director and the writer and the producer of this movie, with Lou Nanne, and with John Harrington, who's also on the 1980 team, also from here in Minnesota. And he's now, I believe, a scout for the Avalanche, and just came back from coaching. He coached, I believe, in Italy and Switzerland the last couple of years, coached at St. John's here in the state. And so I'm just really looking forward to tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing this screening, and just kind of, really, I don't know, hopefully asking some smart questions and engaging in a pretty good panel with the it's the first time I've really ever done anything like this. So, as you can tell, I stopped at Caribou a couple times and just went through Target.
Does that mean you stopped
and
the
went
same Caribou a couple times, or different Caribous?
Actually, no, I did. I
just have this image of you getting your coffee and then circling back to the back of the line.
This actually might be the most shocking thing you've ever heard. So my afternoon consisted of I went and got a massage. Because for some reason, I think it's all these regional jets. My back and my neck last night at the game were just absolutely in pain. So I did that, and then I went to Caribou, and then I went for lunch at like 3 o'clock or whatever it was, and then I went back to Caribou, and then drove here and went through Target, saw Jordan Schrader, by the way, then stopped at Starbucks. So in the last 2.5 hours, I've had 3 medium coffees.
Now, I just got done with ESPN's 30 for 30 on the Russian national team that lost in the Miracle of Ice game. And I thought it was brilliant in that it humanized the Soviets. It humanized the Soviet players. It told you the backstory. It brought to light that they weren't always this world power, that they really came to international hockey a little bit late, but it became a source of national pride. And that the changing of the coach from the grand, very expressive, emotional coach to the kind of the robot who contributed to the loss to the Americans. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you think that the Red Army documentary differs from that?
I think it's going to probably be pretty similar, and I think that's probably why the 30 and 30 was made. I think the timing is interesting. But I've heard unbelievable things about this movie. And I will say, you just brought something up that popped in my head that I want to ask Lou Nanne about. Remember, Lou Nanne was in the 1968 Olympics. And so that was kind of pre the Soviet Union power, and I kind of want to get his contrast between those teams and basically the team that obviously he was part of in 1980, the Miracle on Ice.
Where were you during the Miracle on Ice?
I was 6 years old, and I actually remember, I grew up on Long Island. I actually remember it being on, let me just read this text message. Okay. So I remember, I was young, obviously, and this is kind of when I first started to fall in love with hockey, because if you remember, 3 months after the Miracle on the Ice, after the Americans won, the Islanders won their first of 4 straight Stanley Cups, and that's when I first have my kind of memories of watching the Cup. And coincidentally, Kenny Morrow came right to the Islanders after that and was part of those 4 straight Cups, and I've talked to him a gazillion times about that. He's a scout still with the Islanders and press boxes all the time. But I do remember watching that and years later learning that, one, it was not the gold medal game, the game that the actual Miracle on Ice game that you hear, Do You Believe in Miracles? And the other thing is that it wasn't live.
I know.
I never knew that until I was, a teenager years later. And again, the same thing, as a kid, I thought when they beat the Soviet Union, that was when they won the gold medal. Not just understanding. And I don't even think that it was just being a 6-year-old kid not knowing that. I think, actually, I was really probably 5 and a half. So 5.5 at that point. I think a lot of people, if you ask them today, they also thought that was the gold medal game, and then the fact that they actually had to go out and win another game and eked that victory.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people don't realize that.
I was in high school in St. Louis. Yes, I'm older than you are, and all my buddies play. St. Louis has surprisingly good high school hockey. Probably because they have a lot of good private schools. They're willing to spend the money to be good, and so all my buddies were high school hockey players. So we were packed around the TV. We tried not to find, when the games were tape delayed, we tried not to find out what happened so we could watch the game and pretend it was live. And I remember everybody being much more nervous during the gold medal game than during the semifinal against the Soviets because, the Soviets, nobody really thought they could win. It was just this grand hope. Once they beat the Soviets and you realize they could win the gold medal, it became that nervous thing that you see infecting so many sports teams where, now you have something to lose.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I don't know why this popped in my head because this is the worst analogy ever. I'm not even going to say it. It's so stupid. But, what I was going to say is, how, as a sports writer, when you get nervous that you have this great storyline that's going to be ruined.
Yeah.
And for some reason, talk about an absolute awful analogy of what you were just talking about, the gold medal game and the nervousness. But I remember Marian Gabourik's 5-goal game here when Martin Schooler turned that puck over in front of the net, and all of a sudden it's like this great storyline that looked like it was going to be absolutely just like ruined. And I honestly, if they didn't win that game, I probably would have ran school out of town right after that game. I was so pissed off in the press box. And you're writing this whole story and of this incredible game. And then luckily, actually, it made for a better story because then Gaborik gets that breakaway and scores his 5th goal.
I always loved Jacques Lemaire's defenses of Martin Schooler.
Oh.
It was always.
Do you remember?
He is big.
Yeah.
He makes people uncomfortable. I can't do Jacques Lemaire very well, but it was always his comeback was always he's a big guy.
I think Mark Walleman or somebody was on vacation because I got away with at the Strip. I mean, you're allowed to colonize, and I'm really not. And I think they were on vacation because it was the end of December. Where he turned a puck over against San Jose and they lost, and I wrote this column, just scathing column about Jacques not scratching him, and that's that's stuff that you really can't get away with as a beat writer. But I got it in the paper, and he was scratched in the next 2 games, and that was kind of the time that I think my relationship entirely turned with Jacques.
Yeah, let's get to current events now. I remember we were sitting in the press box when the Wild were probably at their absolute worst, and they looked buried in the standings, and you and I are sitting up there talking about it, and I decided to write, you know what, don't try to save the season, Chuck.
Right.
It's over. You're too far buried. It would take a miracle to bring in a goalie who would be good enough to help you get back in the playoffs. Save the season, and I'm shocked he was able to.
Well, and also, I mean, I'm one of those that probably think that he did it too late, but you know what? If he didn't do it as late as he did, he probably winds up trading for Jonas Enroth, the Buffalo goalie, who was just traded today to Dallas, coincidentally. And trust me, I just don't buy that he would have been like Dubnyk. Right. He is not the same guy. And so, I think, again, Dubnyk, from what I understand, was not available until that week. Because that was pretty much the week, if you remember, that I think Arizona had this awful loss and I can't remember. And then they came here, and that's when Don Maloney kind of lost his top and lost his lid and basically said, we're going to throw away this season and kind of, rebuild mode and trade everybody. And that's when that just at the same time, the Wild were in that position where all of a sudden Kemper got hurt and they had to go with Backstrom, who just couldn't do it. And so, I this demeanor that I think makes things calm for everybody in front of him. He's the only goalie that I've ever seen that jokes around before games and plays with, gets in all their little contests. And, I talked to him. I actually wound up not putting it in today's story. I'll probably put it in the next couple of days. But I talked to him a lot about that, about why he talks to the press on game days, which a lot of goalies don't do, why he plays in these pregame soccer games and all that stuff. And it's all because he feels that if he's uptight before a game, he brings it into a game. It's why he showed me an example that I watched for last night, and I saw it a couple times. After most stoppages in your own zone, the referee just always seems to naturally go over to the cage and kind of lean on it, and he always takes that opportunity to just shoot the shit with the ref. And it's not to kiss up or anything. He'll talk to him about anything other than the game. Once in a while, he'll say, if a power play is starting, hey, just please watch my crease, that type of thing. But he'll talk about anything, oh my God, you see that person in the stands, you see that sign, you see whatever, and he does it just to get his mind off that game at that point. And it's really kind of fascinating, all these little mental things that he has learned over the years. And I think I told you this. He was the Scholastic Player of the Year in the Canadian Hockey League. Now, think of how many teams are in the Western Hockey League, the Ontario Hockey League, and the Quebec Hockey League. Now, obviously, I don't know how exactly that's picked, but for him to be the Scholastic Player of the Year tells you the intelligence level of this guy. And, you just see it after the game last night. Whether or not you think it was a bad goal or not by Dustin Byfuglien, what I love about this guy already is that he can dissect exactly what he was thinking on the entire play. And he explained exactly why he was in the position he was in the net, and I think he probably feels like he should have been a little farther out and a little closer to the other post. I think he was probably hugging the post a little too much. But he explained why he was there. Dustin Byfuglien's liable from that angle to just try to blow it by you, so he tried to get on that side. Then all of a sudden when he got that tight, he was trying to flatten himself out because he thought that Dustin was going to cut to the net and go to his backhand. And then while he's thinking all this stuff in his head, that's when Dustin, all of a sudden, he said he saw Dustin flick his hands over, and that's when he's like, oh, shit. And that's at that point where you're just hoping that you have your angle perfect, or he's just going to miss the far side of the net. And unfortunately, Byfuglien put in a perfect shot. It was actually posted in if you look at the replay. So, but again, that's stuff that you don't get normally from a goalie, right?
No.
Normally you just you don't get that from anybody, actually. That's actually sometimes your frustration with players. I remember, I used to interview a certain player on this team that you'd ask him, why'd you do that? And he goes, I don't know. I don't think like that. I just do it, and that's what you kind of love as a beat writer, is kind of explain to me what you were doing there. And he just tells you. It's pretty cool.
What's also pretty cool is 5 days after you told us how Dustin Byfuglien was going to be with the Minnesota Wild, he comes through. What was the trade you proposed? Granlund and Spurgeon for Byfuglien? If only they listened to you. They would have traded for Byfuglien just in time.
Did I really? Did I say that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm completely
because
giving
what's
shit
bizarre?
here.
You know what was bizarre is somebody on Twitter this morning says, "Wow, you just called that Byfuglien thing last night," and I'm like, I don't remember. I know we talked.
No, we talked a lot about Byfuglien. We talked about him as a potential future Wild member.
Yeah, and also how he's a thorn in the Wild side.
Yes.
So maybe that's what that Twitter follower mentioned. But the guy is what they need. Whether you play him at right wing up front or whether you play him as a big shot right defenseman, he's just an all world player. And we talked last week about how he's gotten physically, although he looks like he's put on a little weight. There's certain players that can gain weight during the season. They're like sports writers, and a lot of players lose weight. Buff's on the other side. But he got himself in pretty decent shape last year and during the offseason, and he's just an absolute thorn in the Wild side, man. He loves getting in anybody's faces in a Wild game, and he skates with a lot of these guys during the summer, and man, he's so good. It's just that simple.
Yeah, no, he's really good, and they need a physical presence like that too. I don't believe in the fighting physicality in hockey that makes a difference, but you need to be able to play physical.
They do need. I will say, I don't buy the whole they get pushed around or they need an enforcer. I don't buy that, but they need more sandpaper in their lineup. Now, I'm not. A lot of people today on Twitter have asked me about Chris Stewart, the Buffalo Sabres power forward, and I am not a fan of his, and he is. There are a lot of red flags there. There's a reason why this guy has bounced around. There's a reason why Buffalo made such a big trade for them and then doesn't want any part of them. Why St. Louis didn't. Why Colorado got rid of him for Eric Johnson. There are some red flags, trust me. And I don't think he's very good. I mean, he's scratched all the time. He's another guy that, fitness-wise, when you see him, it's clear that's an issue. I covered his brother in Florida, and I like his brother a lot. I mean, I think they're probably good people, but I just think there's some issues here. But that is kind of the player they need, but I don't think him. I just don't like him as a player. I will say in Buffalo, when the Wild beat the crap out of him a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he was the only guy on that ice that impressed me. I mean, he was the only guy that played angry, and they need a guy that plays angry. I mean, they just, they need somebody that's going to just, hit and some size and all that. But, I don't buy that the Wild are being pushed around right now. Jason Zucker, that was a collision for a puck that two guys are racing for, and the bigger guy won. But that wasn't Luka Spica pushing around the Wild. That was something that happens in hockey. Ryan Carter's as gritty as they come. He just got himself in a bad spot, and the guy took advantage and checked him. The Granlund thing, he was pushed around. Spurgeon, we see at times he's pushed around. But to me, the way to counteract that is not so much going to get an enforcer, because they don't really exist anymore. And I have covered the Wild for a long time. I covered this team with Derek Bugard. People got hurt with Derek Bugard in the game. Kim Janssen got sucker punched by Brad May 5 feet from Derek Bugard on the bench. That didn't stop Brad May from doing that. What you need is just the makeup of the Wild right now is a little concerning from that standpoint. You look at Winnipeg and just how big and tough they are, and the fact that last night there was no doubt what Winnipeg's game plan was going to be. It's not because the Wild are the Wild. They played the night before. They're shorthanded. So now you come out and you just try to take advantage of that your size by going after them all night. And in the first period, if it wasn't for Dudnik, it would have worked.
Right. That's Michael Russo. I'm Jim Souhan. This is the podcast, SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. We are live at the local tonight. Next Wednesday night, we'll be live at Kieran's Irish Pub. We bounce back and forth between the two great Irish pubs in downtown Minneapolis. Next week, 5 o'clock at Kieran's. This Friday and next Friday, 5 o'clock on Friday at O'Gara's Pub over in St. Paul. Right now, we're going to give you a little introduction to the Rusty Gatenby Show, which is another show on the Alive and Social network of podcasts. Then we're going to come back and ask Michael about the Zucker and Carter injuries, take your Twitter questions, and get another coffee recommendation from Michael. All right, Souhan and Russo back on SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Thank you for listening. All the podcasts are at the website, SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Michael, before we get to questions for you, just break down the Zucker and the Carter injuries. How much do they hurt? How do they replace these guys?
Well, I mean, it's big. I talked to Chuck Fletcher yesterday, and he gave the stock answer that he always gives, and that'll be in tomorrow's Star Tribune, but about how they handle this now, because I think they've got to get they've got to make a trade. The question is when. Right now, he wants to give these guys a chance to step up. The Niederreyers, the Coyles, the Hollas, the Fontaines.
Veilleux.
Yeah, Veilleux. But I think he's going to have to make a trade, and probably sooner than later. I think waiting to March 2nd might be foolish. This is a huge trip coming up, and this. The reason why this hurts is not just the lack of offense that you lose with Zucker, and Zucker's the big one. I mean, and I like Ryan Carter, but you can get Veilleux and you can get Brett Sutter, and you can replace him easily. But Zucker now, what it does is what made the Wild. I know the fans are gonna it drives some fans crazy the way that Mike Yeo treats Coyle and Niederreiter. But every time they are in this position, they don't do well. You know, I mean, Coyle maybe that is unfair because Coyle has played well on a top line, but every time he moves up, does not look right there, and he was not good last night.
No, he wasn't.
And what made them dangerous during this winning streak was having that line with Coyle and on a third or fourth line where all of a sudden it just deepens everything, and now you take Zucker out, and now what it does is it moves 3 or 4 different bodies at different positions, and it just absolutely lessens the impact of your third and fourth lines in my mind. I mean, last night there was nobody on those lines that had all provided any sort of threat offensively, and so this is big. The other thing about both these guys, first of all 3 of their guys are left wingers. All 3 of their guys are penalty killers. That's big. They all go north. They looked slower last night, but I think a lot of that's just due to the sapped energy from playing the night before, and also it's not just playing the night before. It was overextending themselves where they played with 10 forwards the entire game. And so, last night I expected to see what I was seeing. Only I kind of expected that we'd see the Dallas 7-1 loss, but because of Dubnyk, we didn't see that. And also the Wild did play better than they played in Dallas. The Wild in the second period were pretty good yesterday. And if you think about it, as disappointing as it was that the Wild didn't get that second point yesterday, they had ample opportunities to win. Hutchinson was good. Suter hit a post. Nino hit a post at the end. They had many chances to win that game, and so that was not like Dallas game. But I worry now about their how this affects their speed. You just see again, Nino. One issue with him is that I still think that he needs to gain some steps in his game. He just from a tempo standpoint, there's no speed there, and so it's a concern.
Yeah. All right, we've been live at the local for a couple of months now. This is the first time we've actually had an amp and a monitor set up so that people can listen. And Ben was nice enough to drop by to listen. Ben, do you have a question for us? Fire away.
Yeah, come over.
Or come over and yell in Mike's ear.
Here, talk in here.
All right. Thanks, guys. My question is, from a Dubnyk perspective, at what point does Chuck Fletcher have a large enough sample size, assuming this strength continues, to lock him up, whether it's for 1 year, 2 year, multi-year? We've seen a lot of great things so far.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it, man.
I will say this. This is total conjecture. I have not asked Chuck this. Well, that's not true. I kind of have. But my guess is totally at the end of the season. Like there is no reason to get in especially a goalie's head right now. This is not. To me, there's no threat here that if you wait to the end of the year that he's going to be like, the hell with it, I'm going to free agency and I'm going to go get paid a ton of money. I think that he's because of the intelligence that I just brought up, I think he also understands this is a really good fit for him. Do you really want to go make a ton of money playing in Buffalo or Edmonton again, which he could probably go back to Edmonton right now on a huge contract? I think that he's going to look at here and say, you know what, I'll sign here for 2 or 3 years at the end of the year, but I don't think you do that now. And the other thing is, from a Wild perspective, I would say that whatever happens the rest of this way, that Dubnyk is probably going to be the guy. Like, if you just look at the free agent, you can't go into next year with Kemper and Backstrom.
No.
So
shouldn't have gone into this year.
And if you look at the free agents that are available, it's just abysmal. So to me, Dubnyk is gonna probably be the Wild's number 1 going into next year. It's just a matter of when they get that done. And then Kemper, my guess would be the number 2. And my guess is that they buy out Backstrom. And a lot of people have asked if they trade Kemper. I don't know if they'd pull the plug yet. And
what's his value? You're not going to get value for him.
Yeah, no, but he's a young goalie. You're right. You probably wouldn't get like top value what you would have, but again, if you trade Kemper, you got to get a backup at some point. Like you can't go in with Backstrom again. I don't think. A lot of people have asked me this week on Twitter too if they trade Backstrom because the Rangers are looking for a backup goalie. My guess is, again, this is it's kind of talking to a couple scouts, but it's not really anybody with total knowledge. But Henrik Lundqvist is going to be back in 3 weeks. They want a backup right now to help Cam Talbot. You don't, first of all, Nicholas Backstrom has not been playing well, and second of all is that he's got a year left on his deal at 3.5. You're not for a 3 week problem going to trade for Nick Backstrom? I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I don't think Nick Backstrom's tradable.
You know, Ben, now you realize how easy my job is when I do a podcast with Michael Russo. You ask one question, and then you take a walk, you come back, you get a coffee, and Michael's just wrapping up.
I was on Sirius Radio the other day, and they asked me 4 questions in a 15-minute interview.
Seriously, it's like I don't even know if I need to be here. But good question, Ben. I appreciate it. Let's go to a couple Twitter questions. Mark R., I didn't see this elevation in Koivu's game coming. Where did that come from?
Well, you know, he's a prideful guy. I mean, you do wish it happened sooner. But, you know, I hate to say it, too. A lot of it had to do with they finally, you know, ran 6 straight games of Zucker, Koivu, and Palmville. He developed a chemistry there. You know, I think it is easy to play with Zuck, which is another feather in Zucker's cap. Because everything that I've heard the last couple of years from teammates is that, you know, because he didn't read the game very well in the defensive zone, he was very hard to predict and play with. And if Mikko Koivu, the most defensively responsible guy on the team, who knows the system like the back of his, you know, hand, could play with him easily, I think it says a lot. But, yeah, I mean, he just he looks faster. Mm-hmm. He looks more powerful. He looks angrier, which I know is a joke amongst fans since I wrote that story, the Angry Mikko story. But... You know, he looks like, you know, I'm not going to say the old Mikko because the old Mikko was a pretty special player, but I think he's showing you, you know, I think, again, he's showing you how prideful he is. You know, I love, the whole strip to see thing is just so absurd. Like, I love fans that tell me that Mikko Koivu is a bad leader. Like you've ever been in the locker room, you know? Like, it's just, the only thing that is a genuine, and this is where I'm kind of saying stuff that I really haven't put in the paper, but...
It's okay.
This damn podcast, man. Jim, you're going to get me in so much trouble.
Well, that's my goal.
The only genuine concern that fans should have about Mikko at the C is because of his intensity and his quote-unquote angry Mikko, the officials hate him. And that is a problem. You know, when your officials, when the linesmen despise you, when the referees don't want to talk to you, you know, that is a problem. And the Wild have been working on him to try to fix that. I know a linesman really well that I've talked to in the last 3 weeks that told me that he went the first game recently without. I should not tell the story, but I'm going to.
I love that about you coming on the podcast.
So
you tell me all the things you shouldn't tell anybody.
This is a great story, and this linesman kicked Meek, and this is actually going to make the linesman look bad. This linesman kicked Mikko out like 5 or 6 times. And one day before a game, he said to Mikko, hey, do you know my name? And Mikko's like, because you always call me buddy or man or whatever. And Mikko didn't know the name, and I don't want to say the linesman's name, so I'm really trying to like almost convoluted tell the story because it's so easy for me to get out. But the guy's like, well, my name's this, and I've been a linesman in this league for X amount of years. I have done Wild games for 10 years while you've been on the team. You have never called me by my name. Yet every time I call you Mikko, it's a respect thing. You know? And then he brought up all these different players.
And then Mikko said, sure,
so
buddy.
So anyway, next game, Mikko comes out for the opening faceoff and goes up and gives him a tap on the ass and goes, hey, blank. That game, he didn't throw him out once. then he God, I want to tell this part of the story, but I might give away who the linesman is. There was a game recently where, out of the goodness of this linesman's heart, to show this to Mikko, God. All right. So he goes to Mikko. There's a TV timeout, power play for this other team. I'm trying not to tell the team now because anybody can look up the linesman. So he goes to the bench during the TV timeout and says, Mikko, because Mikko is treating him with respect all game. He goes, what side do you want the face-off on? So Mikko tells him, I want it on the left side, my dominant side. So defensive zone draw, Mikko comes out to take the PK. They lose the draw. 9 seconds later, the other team scores.
That's not the ending I was expecting.
And then the linesman just felt absolutely awful. He basically said that, have you pick, the thing, and then they scored the goal. And anyway, so then Mikko skated up to him later in the game. Was, I'm not treating with you any respect anymore as a joke, because they developed this rapport now, where all of a sudden the linesman's doing Mikko favors for a defensive zone PK draw, and then it backfires on him. So Miko, as a joke, went up to him. He goes, "I'm not calling you by your name anymore." But anyway,
that's as funny as Miko's ever been.
Yeah, but I will say, like, that game that he had 3 assists, like, Miko, he's so happy when they win. Like, he's in such a good mood. Like, at that morning skate, like, it was just absurd how loose he was. And we saw that at the beginning of the year, too. And I will say that, I think sometimes he gets too uptight, and especially during losses, because he hates losing so much. And so when things aren't going well, he probably wears it too much on his face. And he seems to play much better in these type of situations. I think he's confident with his game right now, feeling good about the team. And so we're seeing good Miko right now.
Next question, Terry Anderson from Twitter.
Man, I will get myself one day, and I'm telling too many stories.
Just
that are not
keep
supposed to be.
Roll with it, baby.
Last week was the worst one with the chocolate chip cookie.
You know what?
Actually, I've talked to that person that told me that story since, and he said actually the punchline is that Bufflin took like 4 or 5 of the cookies, and that's what the joke was. Is that?
Well, that explains the sudden weight gain. Terry Anderson on Twitter, thoughts on the big trade today, the Jets and the Sabres with Evander Kane?
Well, I thought that Kevin Cheveldayoff, who I think is a very good general manager and is building that team the perfect way. I mean, they have so many young kids coming. The Wild will have to deal with this team for a long, long time. They had 6 or 7 guys in the World Juniors. They picked up Army out today, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And then Lemieux today. These are 2 really good young prospects that look like they're going to be NHL players. The Finnish kid was awesome recently in the World Juniors. And then you get 2 pieces that are going to help right now, theoretically, on paper. Drew Stafford and Tyler Myers. So that helps you short-term and long-term for a malcontent that you had to get rid of. So he basically traded a guy that you had, that everybody knew needed to be out of there and was never going to be accepted by his teammates again, and you were able to get this type of thing. I think it's a great move. It's a trade that could probably only be done with a couple teams in this league, because no team in this league was willing to give Winnipeg guys right now that could play, and there's only like 4 or 5 teams in this league right now that are willing, that are not in a playoff race. I mean, that's the way the NHL is. I will say that I am not the biggest Tyler Myers fan, but maybe it's just because I feel like Coda and Shattuck, and he's one of us. Even though
for those who can't see Michael Russo right now, he is talking with his hands like a true Northeasterner.
But I'm not a Drew Stafford fan. But maybe that's also because I've seen him in Buffalo for so long. I think losing envelops you there, and I will say that it's a good move for Winnipeg's problem right now is their 3rd and 4th lines suck. Like if that's where last night killed the Wild, and that's kind of what I mean about having their depth issue and all these guys moving up. The Wild's 3rd and 4th line are so much better than Winnipeg. It's ridiculous. Their top 6 is awesome. Their bottom 6 is terrible. So now you get Stafford and you put him on your 3rd line. You get Tyler Myers and you get a big bomb at the right point. You keep Buff up front. I mean, that's a good trade for them. So, especially now, it's got to be a little scary for the Wild chasing them, which might, create more of a sense of urgency for Chuck Fletcher to do something here, which I think he knows. I mean, every time he gives his stock answer, we'll do something if it makes sense, but I'm going to give the guys a chance. He always makes a trade. I will say, Iowa sucks right now, right? Brett Bulmer, Zach Phillips, Raphael Boussier, these guys have been colossal disappointments. Probably Boussier, it's a little too premature, but the other 2, no future here. The Wild, the last couple of years, traded 2nd-round picks from the Matt Molson deal, 1st and 2nd in the Pominville deal, a couple of prospects, 3rd-round pick for Dubnyk. Chuck really doesn't want to. He almost wants to, even though they got a lot of college kids and junior kids that look like they have a chance to be prospects. The Alex Talks, the Belpedios, the Mario Lucias, the Carson Soucy up at Duluth. Chase Lang, and you don't know, but Chase Lang, Reed Duke, these guys are having great junior seasons. I know I'm just throwing names that you've never heard of, Jim.
That is true. I'm nodding a lot.
He doesn't. Sooner or later, when you see all these other teams like Winnipeg with all these stockpiles of young kids, and you have an Iowa team that's this bad, well, you got to stop trading away these second and firsts and all this stuff, and especially when you have all these college kids that are going to just play. Gustav Olsen here, they were so excited about him, has major shoulder surgery, basically missed the entire year. He's going to come back later this month, but that delays him a year. So it's like, he doesn't want to be every time there's an injury going out, but I think at this point he's got no choice. The Wild deserve to have him make a trade. They did their job and got themselves within 2 points of a playoffs going into tonight. Last night hurt because they could have pulled within 4, then 5 if they'd won, and then 7. It's a huge swing. But they still have 3 games in hand on the Jets. But now the Jets make this move. I wouldn't be concerned at all with Dallas getting Enroth. I don't like Enroth. But, I just think that, he probably has to make a move now. And because the team did its job to get its back in this race, I'm fine with him for a couple games here, seeing if Nino and Coyle and these guys can do it. But, how disconcerting was it yesterday to see Eric Holla's game? I mean, he was the worst player on the Wild last night. And so, as long as this stuff continues, it's like, man, he's got to make a move. And so I do think, was that your question? I don't even remember.
I can't remember anymore. I think I asked you about coffee or travel.
Yeah.
Or living in Minneapolis, or your favorite movie.
I definitely went
like
on a tangent, I feel.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
The last Twitter question.
How awesome is this Q&A with Gabe Polsky going to be tonight? Lou Nanny, who never lets anybody else talk, has something coming to him with me moderating this thing tonight.
With you and Louie, not only...
I'm just going to go... I'm going to give a dissertation about coffee to the audience at the Lagoon and just go into that for an hour and a half. And then, by the way, this is John Harrington and Lou Nanny, a couple Olympians. Gabe Polsky won himself an Emmy. Just was in the Cannes Film Festival.
I think you and Lou have to buy everyone else in the joint like an oxygen mask, because you two are going to be sucking all the oxygen out of the room.
That is true. I haven't been to this theater. Have you been?
I haven't been there in decades.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like.
I think they
anymore.
just did a renovation. If that's the one I'm thinking of. I know they were doing a renovation.
I've heard it's nice.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing if they're having this event there, it must be pretty nice. Last and maybe my favorite Twitter question of the night, Katie Zachman, one of our loyal followers and tweeters, asked, last night during the game I was wondering what your jobs were like, to both of us, before tweeting during games existed, which is a great question.
It is such a great
The business
question.
has changed so much. I'll let you go first.
God, you want to talk about something I could talk about for an hour and a half. We could talk about Twitter one day just on a podcast. I don't remember it. I mean, honestly, I will say...
I do. Because I was a beat... I really was a beat writer before Twitter
I will confess one thing. And I know a lot of beat writers probably don't do it as much as I do. One reason why I kind of will put a lot of play-by-play out there, there's some examples last night of, lines changing or I can't think of what the examples are. Is a lot of times I will tweet it and then copy and paste it right onto my file, and that's I almost don't keep written notes anymore during a game. I just copy and paste my tweets to almost build a timeline on my file, whether I use it or not, to remind me of stuff that happened in the game.
That's smart.
So that's why Doug McClain always sends me DMs during a game enough. I don't give a shit if Ryan Suter hit the post off a face-off. I'm kind of. Are there any kids around here?
I don't think so. It's an Irish bar.
All right, good.
Actually, it's an Irish bar. The kids are working behind the bar.
But Twitter is good and bad. I've always say it's a curse or a blessing. There are times during a game where fans will say stuff and wow, I didn't see that, or I will say, I'll admit high-heartedly, I did not see Zucker get hurt the other day. And then all of a sudden I saw on my timeline people Zucker just got hurt, and then I kind of did the time in my head. And were you with me? And then I went back into the video on NHL.com and watched what happened and was able to describe it. So that's good. Sometimes actually fans will give me just a great line that'll just spark something else. And then there are times where it's unhelpful. Especially if the team's losing, it gets so emotional on Twitter. I mean, it is unbelievable. I wish I could remember. The 3 coffees in the 2 hours is doing something to my head right now because I'm feeling the caffeine go through my brain.
It's another Michael Russo social experiment.
I wish I had favorited this tweet I got from some fan last. Oh, it was after the power play, which actually, he turned out to be okay, right? Because it was 20.